the earliest memory that I have of my childhood is of an existential crisis at the age of 6. And at that time, when I did not possibly know what existence was, or crisis for that matter, I would see my family and neighbors get a job, get married, have children, get their children to go to school, get them married, play with their grandchildren, and then die one day. Was there something more to life, I thought? Life could not be this kind of a meaningless journey from nothing to nothing. I did not have any worldview or a big idea with which I could mold the course of my life, understand the world, and the purpose of it. Years later, at the age of 16, I was introduced to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and his evolutionary theory of human consciousness. The fact that life had evolved out of matter, and mind had evolved out of life, and man and the mind that he represents is just a work in progress. It's not the final end in evolution. And man is a living laboratory from which a new species would be created. And he called it the Superman. Now that was something exciting. Till my 10th grade, I had read a lot of fairy tales, and this was a fairy tale of another kind. Here was an opportunity to be that Superman, to be a protagonist of this fairy tale, and such a noble one at that. And I was just 16 at that time. I hadn't taken the major decisions of my life. And this worldview helped me in taking all the important decisions of my life, what career to choose, which place to live in, decisions to take vis-a-vis various things. For instance, when I was doing my MBA, the highest paying jobs were of companies that were in alcohol and tobacco business. And I consciously decided not to join that company because I would be failing my own worldview, which was helping evolution of human consciousness. Similarly, I had better jobs in Pune or Delhi, but I took up a job in Chennai because that allowed me to go to the Sri Aurobindo ashram on weekends and meet my guru, who was a realized being. So that worldview has helped me mold my life and take all the decisions. Years later, when my son was 4, he asked me this question, "Mama, why are we born?" It was like history repeating itself. And without child-proofing, whatever I had learned about it, I told him about Sri Aurobindo's evolution of consciousness, that how you have to become the next Superman. And one day, his teacher was teaching this poem in the class, "I wish I was in Monkey Land, the land where I was born." And there was a little hand that went up, and it was of my son Aryan. And when she asked him, "Yes, Aryan, you have something to say?" He said, "Ma'am, we should not go backward, we should go forward. You should sing, 'I wish I was in Superman land, the land where I was born.'" Thank you. And just like it had done for me, that worldview has helped Aryan all along. He is in New York now, studying philosophy and filmmaking. He says one gives him content for the other. Filmmaking is like books were in the 19th century, and he wants to use audiovisual media to help creative storytelling so that he can help the evolution of consciousness and thereby live his big idea. So this is what a big idea can do, and we think kindergarten kids are too small for that. That's not the case. That's the age, and as Mr. Menon was saying, that numeracy, literacy, and all that we talk about are merely skills and doorways. But what is that big idea that one wants to live for? What is that idealism? In the ages before 8, kids are full of idealism. They're full of goodness, full of generosity. And we have to create this large worldview for them as the first step for them to lead a life of success. Now, before we move on, I think we should pause and just understand the teleology of education. What is the purpose of education? Is it to equip our children with skills to earn their livelihoods? Or is it to help them become better social citizens? Is it, as Martin Luther King says, build intelligence and character? Or is it all of the above? We intuitively know that it is all of the above. And the Indian ideal was always, the Gurukul system was about helping the child find his Swadharma and Swabhava and help him embark on this life journey and an endless journey of self-discovery and self-expression. But somewhere along the way, we lost our way. And today, if we look at education, it is just skills to earn one's livelihood, and that too, we do a bad job of it because we don't teach children how to learn. So after they have graduated, they don't know how to keep abreast with the latest. We all know that 50% of the jobs will not be there after 30 years. So how are we teaching kids? And if this is all of the above is the aim of education, then what should the 21st century education look like? And what is it that we are trying to do at the Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, Ladakh? I'll let you know briefly. So the first pillar of education is that we should learn in our context. As Sonam was saying, it is not possible for a child to abstract and to understand. I couldn't, for the life of me, understand why Little Red Riding Hood had to wear a hoodie and why her grandmother had to make her warm, because we were always told when guests came, you should switch on the fan and give them nimbu pani. So at a 4-year-old, it is violence to subject it to visualize some snowy place and some area where. And this learning of one's context hit me again when 20 years later, when I went back home to build a house and I was setting up my garden, I had no idea of what grows in that soil. I was a topper at geography. I had memorized the world soils, what grows in Maharashtra to Punjab to Amazon and the savannas, but I wasn't equipped to find out and grow a beautiful garden in my own backyard. No wonder then, thousands of villages in Uttarakhand are becoming ghost villages, because despite the biodiversity that is there, the youth are not being equipped with their contextual knowledge, both the opportunities that the context gives, as well as the challenges that the context provides, because in those challenges is where innovation is rooted. And for instance, this is the context of Ladakh. It is a trans-Himalayan cold desert, and at 3,500 meters, temperatures range from -30 to +35, and life survives on glacial melts. Now, what kind of homes should we build there when it is -30 outside? We are not even doing a good job of building the right kinds of homes here, right? The glass facade buildings in Gurgaon and Bangalore is for the temperate countries like Europe. Our colonized minds, because of the wrong kind of education, just makes us copy those without using our original thinking, what kind of houses we should have. And then if we copy that to Ladakh, it will be even worse. So we first put glass facades and make it 60 degrees, and then fix ACs to bring it down to 18 degrees. 1 degree, I was since 12 o'clock asking the management here to reduce the AC, because 1 degree reduction in AC saves 3.5 million tons of carbon. And similarly, if you have to heat. So our contextual curriculum, for instance, is to make buildings that stay at +20 when it is -20 outside without any artificial heating. And these are passive solar heated buildings. And we draw inspiration from our indigenous knowledge systems. That is the other aspect of context, that it has to be there in one's experience. So we don't have to look always westward for solutions. We can look into our own heritage and get more inspiration and knowledge from our own knowledge systems. So these are buildings of Saspol. This is a palace, and it's 1,500 years old. And we say that mud buildings are kacha. These concrete buildings don't have a life more than 60 to 70 years, and we call it pakka. But this is mud building. It's 1,500 years old. And, so we take inspiration from these and build new homes like this, passive solar modern homes. And this is how contextual education comes alive. The second pillar of the education is we have to develop in our children higher order thinking and deeper order feeling. We all know Bloom's taxonomy here being educators, but I have mapped it with our Indian knowledge system Remember and understand is chitta, which is our memory, past memory, prior knowledge. Apply and analyze is manas, our sense mind. And the highest is evaluate and create, which is wisdom and buddhi. We are struggling today with narratives because the liberal arts education that is missing in this country does not give us the buddhi to find out which narratives to take and what is the big idea is missing in every child. I did this recently with my school, my college, university students, and not even 1% had a big idea in their lives. So when we don't have that, we do not have a compass or a radar to assess the various narratives. And now is the time to go beyond buddhi to something called intuition, and that is the higher order thinking. We don't have to be scared that AI is taking away jobs. Because if machines can do what human beings were doing, it is good that they do. We don't have to dehumanize ourselves. Instead, we have to develop our faculties of consciousness, which our rishis knew, which we have the knowledge systems to know, of intuitive thinking. What Mozart or Beethoven or Kekule and others did. Einstein need not be stray incidences of geniuses, but there can be a system that intuition can be developed. And similarly, deeper order feeling, which is that empathy, that feeling of oneness with the world. Because the problems of climate change are the problems of not feeling one with nature. It is not looking at it as a mother that has to be nurtured and taken care of, but as a resource to be exploited. So these are the things which AI can never replicate. It can never develop empathy or intuition. And that's how AI is pointing us to develop ourselves, human beings. The third pillar of education is experiential learning. Experiential is learning by doing, by feeling, and by being in that context. As we speak now, at minus 18 degrees, our students are making ice stupas across 23 villages of Ladakh. And they are building it. And through that, they are learning gravity, they are learning hydrology and geology and all of that. So experiential learning is also we identify. There are a lot of climate refugees these days. There are a lot of villages that are being abandoned. And we identified a village called Kulum, which has been abandoned by the residents. And the interdisciplinary way of working, we brought 4 schools together. The School of Ecology brought water there through ice stupas. The School of Agriculture researched that what kind of horticulture and plantation can grow there. The School of Eco-Responsive Architecture converted the buildings into passive solar so that people can stay there. And the School of Responsible Tourism curated an edu-tourism destination for that village. And now, after 15 years, 2 years ago, we grew 1,500 kilos of potatoes. And last year, about 5,000 kilos of broccoli and potatoes and so on. And half the village has already come back. So that is experiential learning, not through project works, which we all know don't have any impact at the end of it. We all know it is fake. Neither case studies. I still remember as a 19, 20-year-old, I had to do a case study visualizing myself to be the CEO of global Pepsi Coke, So whatever I was writing was just nothing that made sense. So it's not case studies, it's not project works, it's these kind of, and it need not happen only in university level. At a school level, we can start with segregating waste. We have to create impact creators. We have to give them the confidence that the children can make a change. And that's what experiential learning does. And finally, we all know we have moved from 3 R's of education, reading, writing, arithmetic, which was education, and we've been talking about literacy, numeracy of the Industrial Revolution. 100 years ago, Mahatma Gandhi said that 3 R's is not enough. We have to move to 3 H's, which is head, heart, and hands. And head, because reading, writing, arithmetic were corresponding to the head education. And I say that for the next 100 years, we have to move to the 3 A's of education. And I borrow the terminology from the Upanishads. So the hands is Adhibhuta, which is our material universe, knowledge of the material universe. Adhidaiva is head and heart, which is the knowledge of the non-material universe, both individual and collective. But what is missing in the education system today in India, because we have just borrowed it from the West and even the NEP is not addressed it, is the third A, which is Adhyatma. And the day we stop shying away from spirituality and make it a part of our curriculum in this country, it's only then that India will become the Vishwa Guru or economic guru or whatever in the world. And spirituality is nothing woolly-woolly. It is a very scientific approach to finding out who am I, what is my swadharma, and what am I here to do best, what is my expression. And that is something that we have to focus on, and that connects me back to the big idea. And this is the infographic that dawned upon me one morning. It's quite a stroke of inspiration. And this would be on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum as a permanent exhibit for the education of the future. So I'll just end with a minute to explain this. So the child is at the center of the education system, and the child is like a flower that has to grow into its own uniqueness, not a metal piece that has to be hammered into some desired form by the teacher or the parent. And the child has three aspects: Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhyatma. Adhibhuta is the material understanding of the world, the nature around us, through the understanding of the natural world and how the world works. And this can only happen through contextual education, like what grows in my own backyard. And once this is done, then material freedom is the answer. We all saw now, when the Ukraine war is going on, there is a term called energy crisis in the UK. During COVID, there were global supply chains that failed. So material freedom can only come from local self-sufficiency, and India always had 80% of its staple needs met locally, including a place like Ladakh, which has no vegetation, but even there, people grew barley, because that's something that can grow at 17,000 feet and without water. But, as we say, killing with love, the government of India started bringing basmati rice from Punjab. And this is the second generation that has forgotten how to grow barley. And rice is so much water intensive that, God forbid, if the supply chains were to be cut off, the third generation, it takes 3 generations to completely forget anything, be it shipbuilding that India led or muslin that the Bengal weavers were weaving. 3 generations, you can kill a complete skill. So that is where self-sufficiency and contextual education. Adhidaiva is our relational knowledge, knowledge of society, which is about the man-made world and ideas that change the world. So we don't have to have children who are just following what is told to them, because democracy or capitalism or communism was a produce of some mind, right? It was somebody's higher order thinking. And the systems we have today are not the most perfect, as we all know, be it the money system or the political systems and so on. So the higher order thinking and deeper order feeling is what helps children to come up with new ideas that would change the world, and that leads to social transformation. Because you can be a very rich person in Afghanistan, but if socially you are surrounded by Taliban, it is not a fulfilling life. So you need both social transformation and material freedom. And finally, Adhyatma is knowledge of oneself. In the last 300-400 years, we know about every galaxy, we know about every quark in an atom, but we don't know our emotions, our mind, ourselves. And that subjective knowledge is what is missing, and that is Adhyatma, that is the knowledge of oneself, to answer questions of who am I and how do I express myself, and that can only happen through experiential learning. When I engage with my context, then I find out what I am good at. And that leads to personal transformation. Because you can have material freedom and social transformation, like most of the countries in Scandinavia, but also with the highest suicide rates. Because we come back to the first thing we discussed, there is no larger purpose. There is no worldview. There is no big idea of our lives. And that is what is necessary for personal transformation. And once we have all of these three, we create happy, healthy children, individuals, and a fulfilling life and a happy society. Thank you.